Paul George is leading the league in real plus minus. That's a metric design. I got to explain to Paul because he said to me on the show earlier this week, he goes, net rating, who cares about that? Defensive rating, what does that really tell me? What about your
eye test guy?
Which is
straight eye test.
Is eye test.
Eye test.
So I wonder, we're going to play a little something, nothing, or everything with you. In front offices, you are now throwing these numbers all the time, right? And he has measured net point differential per 100 offensive and defensive possessions. That's his on-court impact. Is him being a leader in this stat, you are both a player with the eye test and now a front office person, does it mean anything that he leads the league in this stat? Is it something, nothing, or everything?
I mean, it's something. It might be everything. Like if you look at that list of people, who are we talking about right now? All the MVP candidates.
Exactly. You don't need the plus minus to tell you these guys are MVP candidates.
It just, you know, it proves it. Just gives you a little, gives you something to.
So you're saying nothing?
There's no numbers that can tell me that I need to see that these 5 guys are dominating the league.
But maybe it tells you, look, you had Giannis Antetokounmpo as your leader in the clubhouse for MVP, and he was fifth on that list.
Just on that list.
Right.
But on other lists, if we go to analytics, he's probably number 1.
No, that's
Rebound
true.
rate.
Right.
Or
That's true. Scoring in the paint, stuff like that.
Scoring in the paint.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
I feel like I could say this. If he wasn't at the top of this list, he probably wouldn't be an MVP candidate.
Oh, that's
right?
good. Right.
Like he's obviously doing something that's putting him at the top.
There you go.
Put him in that conversation.
All right, so I'm going to give you another little stat analytics sort of thing that we look at here at the Sloan Sports Conference. We look at efficiency on pick and rolls, right?
Yep.
So this is interesting. This might not be what you expect. The most efficient pick and roll combination in the league. Would you believe it's Kevin Durant and Draymond Green? Among all duos with at least 100 direct picks set, no one creates more points per play on average. So is this something, nothing, or everything? If you were coaching staff for the Warriors, would you look at this and say, oh, we got to get him in the pick and roll more often?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought James Harden and Clint Capela.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if I had to just guess from the eye test, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Aha. We got him. We got him on something besides that. What do you think? Does that meaningful to you?
No, it is meaningful, of course. I think it's not that surprising when you think about it because you have 2 guys who can both handle the ball, create. You know what I mean? Like, so either way, something good's going to happen.
Right. Okay. All right. So you something. Even we got a something on a stat. We got a something on a stat from Paul. That's like a win. That's good. I'm glad you could be here for this historic moment. All right. I want to get to another stat. James Harden, of course, leading the league in points per game this season. But you might be also surprised to hear he leads the league in deflections per game. Now, look, Paul, you have not been always easy on James and his defensive efforts. He's been better over this last year or two.
Yeah.
Do you think deflections is something that we should look at when talking about who is good or not good defensive player?
That's huge because we had that stat on our board at the end of games or at halftime. We said if we get this many deflections throughout the course of a game, we're most likely playing great defense and we're going to win a game. Sometimes that number would be between 35 and 50 deflections in a game. That means we're playing great defense. We're using active hands. And that's a telling story for the end of the game because usually when you're in that range between 35 and 50, for us, my Boston teams, we would win that game.
Interesting. What do you think?
I agree. Deflections is something I think every team talks about.
So
what is halftime, after the game, assessing.
So what is it, though? Because I've heard players say you shouldn't look at steals because steals really tells you that a player gambles a lot, right? And so, yeah, it's nice if a guy racks up a lot of steals, but that's not actually telling you who's a better defensive player. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I kind of look at it the same way as turnovers. Like, people talk about turnovers, but there's, like, really bad turnovers where you're coughing it up, transition, or they're the ones where you were taking risks. Maybe it's a dead ball turnover, right? It went out of bounds. It's not as bad.
Right.
Same with, like, steals and deflections. To your point, steals can mean that you're just gambling, that you're just kind of going for it.
Right. Deflections not so much.
I'll give you an example. Allen Iverson led the league in steals many years, but was never on the all-defensive team.
Right.
And so I don't know about.
Usually they just go by the number, you know.
Yeah,
surprised by that.
And that surprised me.
Yeah.
That surprised me because I think that's a factor.
Yeah. It's surprising, especially since Allen Iverson is our greatest living American. So, it's important. Yeah. It's important that he gets the recognition he's deserved. All right, I want to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, too, because they have the best record in the league. That's a number even you can get behind, right? That you know that, right?
Behind being the best in the league, yes.
They are, though, Paul, here we're going to wander into territory that you do not like. They are the highest in both defensive efficiency and net efficiency, which by the end of this weekend, I'm going to teach you what those mean. It's the impact. If you look at 100 possessions of basketball, do they have the most impact on those? They can clinch a playoff spot today. Let's look at the Bucks. They could be the first team in the NBA to clinch a playoff spot. Is this something or nothing or everything for a team that hasn't had playoff success yet with this group?
Oh, so you put that little twist at the end.
Yeah.
So to me, it's everything. If you're leading in both those categories, I mean, it's clear. Their record speaks for itself. I know something in the WNBA that I think if you look back at like the last 15 or so winners, another thing to take into account is like the margin of victory. Usually that team is the one that ends up winning, and those two categories lend to that, obviously. But yeah, does that help them in terms of lack of playoff experience and how that pans out? I don't know.
Well, that's everything, because defense usually translates to a team that's, when you're in that category, one of the tops, it translates to a team that's a contender that should be in the finals. You know, the defensive teams I were on in Boston, we were top 5, we were number 1. That always translates to us being a contender.
Now, you guys won that title in Boston fresh, right? Kevin Garnett had just come, Ray Allen. You guys had gone from, I think it was the biggest jump from like worst record to the biggest improvement in NBA history, and then you went on to win the title. That is not usual. Most teams don't make that leap all at once. Do you guys think with Milwaukee, whereas Giannis Antetokounmpo has said, look, we haven't won a playoff series since I've been here, do you think they can make it all the way to the finals being with these kinds of numbers and playing this way but without that experience?
Absolutely.
I do.
You do.
I mean,
You both do.
because to me, another thing that translates to winning and making to the NBA Finals is having a top 5 player.
Right.
That's something that Giannis is. When you look at the other teams in the East and across the league, think about the last 10 finals. How many of those guys have been in the top 5 in the league? You have Curry's top 5 player, Durant, LeBron every year in the East. Giannis is there. And so that's like, in order to make it to the finals or to win a championship, you have to have that caliber player, and he's definitely that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people talk about experience, rightfully so. It is important. I'm not going to say it's not important. But there's something to like the whole ignorance is bliss thing. You don't get caught up in the highs and the lows. And if you do, you don't necessarily know it. You know, it's all brand new to you, and you're kind of just making your way.